He did not let the pending election influence his investigative or prosecutorial decision-making. That's rich. He was racing both cases to trial.
A criminal crusade against political adversaries is completely unprecedented in all of American history.
It is? It's unprecedented?
Special prosecutor.
Is his name deranged Jack Smith by any chance? They took him from our country. They put deranged Jack. He's a deranged, sick individual. But go ahead. I'm only kidding.
Jack Smith is freaked. We know he's not a real boy at all, was disqualified from being a prosecutor of the president because of his illegal appointment. And now he's being investigated by the Trump administration for perverting his office, for taking a bunch of actions that he wasn't authorized to do, knowing he wasn't authorized to do it and doing it anyways. And so the New York Times got their hands on a letter that his attorneys sent over to the Trump DOJ saying, our client's innocent and Judge Chutkin also supported him. In other words, a bunch of corrupt judges like him, and so therefore he's innocent. No, how about that is not how this works. And so we'll go back through this background here before we jump into the letter. I've got it queued up right here, along with reaction on this from others like President Trump himself, who is discussing Jack Smith in the Oval Office. So here's the letter. Jack Smith's lawyers sending this one back over to the DOJ, the U.S. Office of the Special Counsel. They're saying, please don't prosecute our client. He didn't do anything wrong. He was trying to protect democracy. Dear Mr. Greer, they respond, this is Jack Smith's lawyers writing, so can add a little femininity to it. Says, we represent Jack Smith and write in response to recent press reports indicating that your office is investigating our client because he was the special counsel who corrupted the DOJ. Now, although you have not reached out to us to discuss these allegations, we know it's coming, is what they're saying. We welcome the opportunity to engage with your office, and we're confident that as you become familiar with the facts, you will conclude that there is no basis that Jack Smith violated the Hatch Act, and all of the allegations are wholly without merit. Mr. Smith, what he did was consistent with the decisions of a prosecutor who has devoted his career to following the facts and the law without fear or favor and without regard for the political consequences, not because of them. He wasn't even a U.S. attorney. He was completely illegitimate. He had no power to do anything that he did. Judge Cannon threw him out. Illegal. And that argument was made early on in the case, and he actually opposed that, right? And he was just kept marching forward. We understand from public press reports that your office launched this investigation because Tom Cotton sent you a letter. And he said, Mr. Smith's conduct, the senator from Arkansas, as special counsel, his conduct had no legitimate purpose, and it seemed to have no rationale except for an attempt to affect the 2024 election results. Yeah, and they also needed to get the Crossfire Hurricane documents back and all the Obama coup documents back that Trump had taken with him because he was the president, whether you call it declassifications or presidential records, or whether you just say the Constitution gives him permission to the writings, the opinions in writing of his staff in the Constitution, and they're his documents, okay? He was the president. Hillary Clinton was not. Vice President Joe was not. Senator Joe was not. But we know only one of them got raided. Hillary Clinton was never the president. Weird. But she didn't get raided. By the way, right, the rationale is, I think, much more of recapture of compromise that would expose them. That's why they had to risk it, sending in, approving lethal force, not to go take out somebody, but if somebody, Secret Service or somebody starts firing back at these FBI cops, or somebody in Trump's private security starts, what's going on here? We're under attack. They could engage. That was the rules of engagement. So a review of the record in procedural history demonstrates the opposite. No, Mr. Jack Smith, who's not even a real boy, was fiercely committed to making prosecutorial decisions based solely on the evidence that they made up, has steadfastly followed applicable DOJ guidelines that they perverted, and principles of federal prosecution. No, this was a first, a number of different levels. First raid of a president's residence, first FBI agents rummaging through Melania's closet, principles of federal prosecution, right in the run-up to election. Give me a break. He did not let the pending election influence his investigative or prosecutorial decision-making. That's rich. He was racing both cases to trial. Judge Chutkin was saying, you have to squeeze this puppy in immediately so that trial could happen. And then when the appeal went up and the Supreme Court was going to take the case over, then of course she was colluding with Judge Juan the Con Mercan in New York, and then they just tag teamed their trial date. Just like the other corrupt federal judges tag teamed the release of Kilmar, right? They just all kind of consolidate their lawfare attempts, and then they sit around at us and lecture us from their perches with their robes, saying that they're fair and impartial and good stewards of justice. The predicate for this investigation is imaginary and unfounded. Yeah, we're going to find out real fast. Mr. Smith followed well-established legal principles. Again, it's all unprecedented, and the courts presiding over the resulting prosecutions have already rejected the spurious allegations that whatever Jack Smith did was somehow improper. And they say, notably, Senator Cotton does not allege that the criminal charges against Trump were politically motivated or that the indictments were without merit. Well, Tom Cotton's not the prosecutor. He's asking for an investigation to be opened. Instead, his allegations focus on the mechanical steps required to prosecute a case. For instance, in support, Cotton cites unremarkable examples as Mr. Smith seeking, quote, special permission to exceed the normal maximum page limit, asking for a trial date 5 months after the indictment, moving for an expedited review by the appeals court. They say these are routine. They're consistent with and expected of a prosecutor who's prosecuting a case, and they were subject to court approval. That's all ridiculous because we know that the discovery alone in, for example, the January 6th case was millions of pages of documents, like 8 to 14 million. We are aware of no court decision or any other authority to interpret the Hatch Act to prohibit prosecutors from investigating allegations of criminal conduct. Okay? Application of this unprecedented interpretation of the statute risks other investigations, and this interpretation is wrong. The investigation is premised on a partisan complaint that suggests the ordinary operation of the criminal justice system should be disrupted by the whims of a political contest. No, 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 no. That's what Jack did. The notion that justice should yield to politics is antithetical to the rule of law. All right, this is turning into like a blog post, which is, we hate reading these from lawyers. Moreover, the suggestion that Hatch Act can be violated by taking routine procedural steps to prosecute a case involving a candidate for office is unprecedented and risks interfering with the enforcement of our federal criminal laws. How? We don't know. It's just talking. The court overseeing the prosecution in D.C., who was that? Judge Chutkin, who is anti-Trump maniac, in my opinion, reaffirmed this bedrock principle that the justice system is not subservient to politics. That was Judge Chutkin, the same person who was colluding with Jack. Trump is running a political campaign that must yield to the orderly administration of blah, blah, blah. In fact, courts have already considered and rejected the premise of Cotton's allegations. One court denied a motion to dismiss that alleged that the prosecution was selective and vindictive. And who was that? Oh, yeah, it was Judge Chutkin right there. She said the timing of this case, right? Trump said, Jack Smith is a partisan hack who is prosecuting me. Judge Chutkin said, no, he's amazing. And so now Jack Smith's lawyers are referencing Judge Chutkin. Now, with respect to the allegation that Smith sought to influence the election by moving for an expedited review by the appeals court and other things, and both agreed to expedite the appeals, the DC Circuit declared that delaying the trial date would be counterproductive, right? So they say, well, even the Court of Appeals, also corrupt out of DC, well, they want the trial to happen too, because of course they did. And the allegation that Smith skirted the normal appellate process ignores the fact that this was the procedural path taken by other people. And, Jack Smith was trying to leapfrog some certain decisions, go to the Court of Appeals, go to the Supreme Court to get them to come back and rule on these things. And people are going, that's out of order. And the Supreme Court, if I remember correctly, also smacked him down on that. There, the Supreme Court granted petition. And so there's precedent, okay? Jack Smith was just doing what everybody else did, and so he's not a bad person. Given the lengthy procedural record and careful attention afforded to these issues by the judges overseeing these prosecutions, like Chutkin, and I noticed they didn't mention Judge Eileen Cannon in her order that Jack Smith was illegitimate. This office should not relitigate the baseless allegations that were unsuccessfully advanced before the federal courts, and they should certainly not be scrutinized in response to a partisan referral. And so they send this letter like, please don't prosecute. If you intend to go forward with this in any way, just let us know. They're hearing the rumors out there. We insist that you engage with us so that any finding by the special counsel is informed by the record. Okay, let us send you more letters. If you're going to indict us, let us know why, and we'll get you some paperwork. We are confident that an objective assessment of the facts will lead to the inescapable conclusion that the prosecutions that were brought by Jack were entirely lawful and appropriate. No, first of all, they were failures, and he was deemed illegitimate by a real judge who actually understood the law. Judge Chutkin, of course, is just an Obama-appointed partisan in the DC Circuit who is just playing that game. So, nice letter to the DOJ. The DOJ hopefully just says, well, this is interesting, read. Thank you for this. Well, we don't really need to engage with you. You'll get notice of these criminal charges when you get your subpoena, when you get an indictment. How about that? When you get a notice to appear, that's when we'll start to engage with you, and we can talk about a plea deal at that time. But here is how they sound over on CNN. And so I wanted to share a little bit of this with you. I know it's kind of painful to listen to these people, but they're freaked. All right, Jack Smith, you can see, is freaked. His lawyers, reaching out, like, hey, I know you don't want to talk to us, but we really want to talk to you. And the DOJ is just leaving them on red. It's like, nope, DOJ just read it. Interesting. Are you there? I really, need to talk to you. It's pretty important. Please call me. I miss you. Whatever. Goes on and on. So they're getting nervous, sending letters, alerting that, they're on the case. And here are these people over here. And this was on CNN, and they're very nervous. You can hear it in their voices saying Trump is coming after them.
Well, this crusade, a criminal crusade against political adversaries is completely unprecedented in all of American history.
It is? It's unprecedented? I wonder if this guy remembers this photograph right here. Remember when Big Fanny out of Georgia indicted 19 people? And remember when a bunch of other states did that too? Arizona, Chris Mays did it. Other states, I think Wisconsin did it. Remember when Bragg and Tishy, who just got backhanded by the Court of Appeals and had her entire judgment invalidated? Remember when she just got told? You remember that? Never in the history has it happened. Okay, they're just delusional or they're just liars. It's not even a statement you can take seriously 1%.
I think that's true. Now, when the Bolton matter, I think in fairness to the Justice Department, it needs to be pointed out that those search warrants were approved by an independent magistrate, both in New York and in Washington and Maryland. So there was at least some check observed. But when you look at the full range of criminal investigations, whether it's Senator Adam Schiff or New York Attorney General Tish James or Lisa Cook, the Fed governor who was the president attempted to fire today, whether that's legal is a separate question. Miles Taylor, who's on tonight. All of these are political adversaries under criminal investigation. And I should add to that list Barack Obama, whom the president said committed treason and is now under investigation. This kind of crusade against enemies is absolutely unprecedented.
Miles, how concerned or what happened to Bolton could happen to you?
Anderson, we think it's likely. I mean, we think that there's a decent chance. I mean, if, past is any indicator of what the president's done, we think this is certainly possible. But one of the things I want to point out is I think people can get a little disassociated from this whole thing when they focus on the elites who are being targeted. Maybe it worries the average American that John Bolton or Chris Christie or Senator Schiff or Miles Taylor is being targeted, but they don't think it really affects them. That's where I think people are wrong. This is affecting them. In the United States of America, you don't need a permission slip to criticize the president of the United States.
Okay, I even know what he's talking about now. Their party went and rounded up Americans who were peacefully protesting at the Capitol. So if he's going to make the argument that it's like, well, they came for them first and I didn't object, and they came for them and I didn't object, and now they're going to come for you, little Americans. I think their party has a much broader history of that. Trump is removing illegal aliens and sending out the National Guard to clean up the streets, but they are struggling, man. And you can just kind of hear the freaked out voice that they have. And so we don't need to listen to any more of it, but you get the gist. Now, here is what Trump had to say about Jack Smith from the Oval Office. President Trump explaining what he thinks about Jack.
어떻게 작동했나를 확인한 것 같습니다. 나중에 좀 더 자세히 설명을 드리도록 하겠습니다.
So it hasn't been long since Korea has overcame the political turmoil following the self-coup by the former president. Currently, there is a fact-finding investigation by a special prosecutor that was appointed by the National Assembly. And special prosecutor...
Is his name deranged Jack Smith by any chance? They took him from our country. Deranged Jack. He's a deranged, sick individual. But go ahead. I'm only kidding. Maybe I'm not.
And that special prosecutor is not under my control. And so the special prosecutor is conducting a fact-finding investigation. And I would like to explain about what you said about U.S. bases. They did not conduct a search and seizure.
All right, so we don't know if they've got their own version of a deranged Jack Smith over there, but Trump definitely calling out Jack Smith in the Oval Office. And we're going to keep our eye on that one. But of course, we know they are the people who launched the political attacks. They waged a full-blown war against one man and everybody who supported him in the aftermath of January 6th. They went after peaceful protesters. They went after parents at school board meetings. They went after pro-lifers. They went after people who objected to COVID. They had cops showing up at gyms and hair salons. Are you cutting hair in there? Insanity. And they're going to say that Trump's sending the National Guard out or prosecuting the actual criminals who lied and perverted the law for an entire term are innocent victims. We don't think so. And so we're excited to see some developments on it. Jack Smith sounds nervous. It sounds like maybe they know something's coming. They're hearing the rumors out there. We'll keep our eye on this one, my friends. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do.